Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Mohammed Kubayb. In this video, we will deep dive how to migrate Citrix database from one SQL Server to another one. If you find this video useful, please subscribe and hit the bell icon for the future updates. If you want to learn more about Citrix, Azure or AWS, you can also check out my bestseller Udemy course, which is also available in Udemy for Business. So typically we see this type of requirement when there is a end of life for the operating system hosting the database. So in my lab, I have DDC1 and DDC2. So in DDC1, I have SQL Express, which is having my database. So this is an inbuilt database, comes with Citrix CVAT setup. So in this lab, we will see how to migrate the database from SQL Express to SQL Standard, which is hosted in a dedicated server. So if I go to my Azure portal, so here you can see I have a domain controller and then I have two delivery controller and then I have a SQL server. So now we are migrating our SQL Express, which is hosted in DDC01 to SQL1. So there is an article from Citrix. So this is very helpful when it comes to the migration because they have the script. So using this script, we will migrate the database. So let's download the script. So once you have the script, first step we need to take the backup of our virtual machine as well as database. So let's go to the database. So this is my database. As you can see, Citrix CTX site and monitoring and logging. So we need to take a backup of these three database. So let's go to policies. So let's go to task and let's click on backup. So the location, I'm going to add a custom location for the backup. So which is typically ctemp. So file name, we can name it as sitedb and let's click OK. Click OK once again and let's click OK. So now it will execute the backup. So as you can see here, the backup is in progress. So yeah, the backup for the sitedb is completed. Similarly, we need to follow for the monitoring and logging. So the backup is completed now for all the three DBs. So here we have the backup. So let's copy this backup and we'll keep it in the new SQL server. So we have copied all the three database. So let's go to the new database server, which is SQL1. So this is my new database server, which is 10.0.0.11, having the hostname as SQL1. So here we need to restore the database. So in order to restore the database, let's click on the database. So here we have an option called restore DB. Let's click restore DB and here we need to select a device. Now we need to select the path. So our file is basically we have kept in ctemp. So let's browse to ctemp and let's go to database new. So let's restore sitedb first. Click OK. Let's click OK. So the database restoration for the sitedb is completed. As you can see, we have the sitedb over here. So let's do the same for our monitoring and login DB. So the restoration for all the three DB is completed now. So the next step is we need to define the DDCs here with the permission. In order to do that, let's click on new query. So here we need to execute this particular command. So basically it will add DDC01 machine account to the logins. So let's execute this. So as you can see, if I refresh under logins, we should be able to see DDC01. So similarly, we will do it for DDC02. So this is also done now. So now we have defined the logins. So now we need to define the permissions for these two machine accounts against our DBs. So as per the document, for DDC1 and DDC02, so we need to give the permission on site DB with all the permissions mentioned over here, except starts with the DB underscore. So let's select DDC01 and let's go to user mapping. Under that, we need to select our database and then we will give the permissions. So we'll select all the permissions except which is starting with DB underscore. So which is this one. So we'll not touch anything DB underscore. So rest we need to make sure we are defining all the required permissions. Click OK. So similarly, we need to repeat for DDC02 as well. So now we need to define the roles for the other database, which is monitoring and logging. So let's go to the same article and we'll see for the monitoring, we need to select only monitor data role. So we don't need to, so no need to define any other roles. Let's go back and let's select the database and let's select monitor data. So now the third one is logging. So for logging, we just need config data scheme role. So let's click OK. So now we need to extract the script which we have downloaded earlier and we will open this in a PowerShell. So I will copy this to my DDC01. So now I will open PowerShell over here. So we will load the database script. So the first step, we need to run the snapin command in order to load all the PowerShell snapin related to Citrix. So now we will see the database details. So by running get broker DB connection. So at this moment, as you can see, our database server name is DDC01 and the instance is SQL Express. So, so similarly, we'll get the log database details. So let's run this. So as you can see, this is my log database details and the same goes for the monitoring as well. So this is my database server name and this is my instance and here is my database which is Citrix CTX-site. So before we do the database migration activity, we need to gather all these details in order to make sure there is no issue with the existing connection. So we also validate our Citrix Studio. So as you can see, we have our machine catalog, we have our database. So similarly, we also need to make sure that when we access the storefront, we are able to see all the applications. So as you can see, this is my storefront server and I have a published desktop which is named as HST. So this is how you need to validate your infrastructure before you start to migrate the database. If you find any abnormalities, you need to rectify before you proceed with the migration. So the next step is we need to disable the connection to our logging and monitoring database. In order to do that, we need to run this particular command. So let's execute this. Similarly, we will execute for the monitoring DB as well. So the expected result after running this command should be db unconfigured. So if you get any other output, so you need to rectify it. So now we need to nullify all the DB connections which is coming from the DDC using these commands. So let's execute this. As you can see, the expected result should be unconfigured. So similarly, we need to execute all the remaining commands. So I'll select all and I will execute this. So now we have successfully run all the commands. In order to validate, we need to run this get commands. So when we run the get commands, we should not see any database string. So let's execute. As you can see, we are not seeing anything. It means that our connection to the database has successfully nullified. So we do not have any existing active connections to our existing SQL Express database. So similarly, we will validate for the logging and monitoring as well. So as you can see, it is status is showing stopped, and status here under DB it is showing unconfigured. So let's get validated for the monitoring DB as well. It same goes for the monitoring DB. So if you are running multiple DDCs, we need to execute the same command in other DDC servers as well. So now if you go to your storefront server and if you try to access your application, so you will not see any application. Why? Because there is no DB connections between our DDC and the database. So that is the reason we are not able to see anything. So now let's try to do the migration. So we need to make sure that the required ports between our DDC and SQL server is open. So normally we use 1433. So make sure that that particular port is up and running and open from our DDCs. So these are the string where we are going to define our new database server. So either you can enter the details here or you can also define over here. So it's up to you how you are executing these commands. So I'm going to enter the details over here. So we'll replace this with our own details. So which is SQL 1 dot avdbus dot site. So this is my SQL server name, and now we need to define the DB details. So let's go to the notepad and I'll take the DB detail which is my site DB. So I will enter it over here. So similarly, we need to do it for logging and monitoring. So that we'll do in the next step. So once we define this particular string, so let's execute this. So in order to view the string, so what we can do, you can write a command, write output, then you need to enter the variable which is site. So this will validate the value stored under the variable. So now we are connecting to SQL1 avdbus.site and the database Citrix ctx-site site. So once we validate, we will try to run these commands. So it will establish a connectivity to our new DB hosted in the new database server. So let's execute the first command, which is set admin DB connection. So the output is okay. It means it is successfully connected to the new database server. So let's execute all the remaining commands now. So I'm going to select and then I'm going to click on this execute command. So we need to make sure we should get okay for all the remaining commands. So we can see okay output for all the commands. Now let's execute for monitoring and logging as well. So monitoring database also completed. So now we have restored all the database connection. Similarly, we need to perform the same on our DDC 0. So now the migration is completed successfully. So let's validate using our Citrix Studio as well as logging into storefront URL. So I'm going to the first DDC server and I'll open Citrix Studio and we'll make sure that we are able to connect to our database. So our studio is successfully loaded. So it means that it's connected to the database. So let's validate from the GUI. So let's go to configuration and here as you can see here the server is now sql1.avdbus.site, which means this is our new SQL server. So let's go back to our storefront server and we'll make sure resources are populating over there. So I'm going to relog in. As you can see, now we are able to see the desktop icon. So this is how you can plan and migrate your DB from one server to another.